Why does your credit card balance barely move even after you make the payment every month? Why does paying on time still feel like standing in the same hole? And why does the bank call it a minimum payment when for you, it can become a maximum trap? The real question is not, why are you so irresponsible with credit cards? The real question is, who benefits when your debt stays alive for another month? That is the part most people miss. A minimum payment feels responsible because it keeps the account current. It helps you avoid a late fee. It protects your credit score from immediate damage. It gives you the feeling that you handled the bill, but there is a hidden difference between keeping an account alive and actually escaping the debt. The minimum payment is not designed to make the debt disappear quickly. It is designed to be the smallest amount you can pay while the balance keeps moving forward. That is why credit card debt can feel so confusing. You pay. The account says thank you. The payment posts, you did the right thing. Then the next statement arrives and the balance still looks almost the same. So you ask yourself, what am I even paying for? The answer is painful. A large part of the payment may not be attacking the debt. It may be paying for time. And time is exactly what high-interest debt wants. In this video, we are going to break down why minimum payments can keep people stuck, how interest turns patience against you, and the plain money rule that helps you tell the difference between paying a credit card and actually killing the balance. Start with the statement. You open your credit card app and see a balance of $4,800. The minimum payment is $142. That number feels manageable. It is not small, but it is not impossible. You can fit it into the month, so you pay it. For a moment, you feel relief. But here is the trap. The minimum payment is not the real price of the debt. It is the price of keeping the debt around. If your interest rate is high, the lender does not need you to pay a huge amount. The lender only needs the balance to survive. Because as long as the balance survives, interest has something to feed on. That is the first painful truth. Minimum payments can turn debt into a subscription, not officially, not in the words on the statement, but emotionally and practically it can start to feel like one. Every month money leaves your account. Every month you feel like you paid. Every month the debt is still there. And if you keep using the card while paying only the minimum, the balance can stop feeling like a temporary problem and start feeling like a permanent bill. That is when credit card debt becomes dangerous, not because the card exists, not because credit is always bad, but because the minimum payment can create the illusion of progress. Progress is when the principal is shrinking in a meaningful way. Maintenance is when the account stays current while the balance keeps surviving. A lot of people confuse those two because the payment screen makes both of them look similar. You clicked pay, the payment cleared, the due date was handled. But the real question is not, did you make a payment? The real question is, did the debt lose power? If the answer is no, then the payment may have bought you another month inside the same problem. This is why credit card debt can become long-term debt even for people who never miss a payment. Bankrate's 2026 credit card debt report found that 47% of American credit card holders reported carrying a balance, and among people with credit card debt, 61% had been in debt for at least a year. Some had been in credit card debt for 3 years or even 5 years. That matters because long-term credit card debt is not always a story of reckless spending. Sometimes it starts with an emergency. A car repair, a medical bill, groceries during a tight month, a job gap, childcare, rent pressure. The problem is that once a balance is created, the minimum payment can make the debt feel managed while interest quietly stretches the timeline. That is the second painful truth. Being current is not the same as being free. You can be on time and still be trapped. You can avoid late fees and still lose hundreds or thousands of dollars to interest. You can feel responsible and still be stuck in a system where the balance is moving too slowly to change your life. This is where credit card interest becomes brutal. A credit card is not like borrowing from a friend who says, "Pay me back when you can." A credit card balance is a machine. Every day, the unpaid balance can generate interest. Then the next month, if you still carry a balance, more interest can be added. If your payment barely beats the interest, the principal moves slowly. If new purchases are added, the debt can grow even while you are paying. That is why the balance can feel alive. You are not only fighting what you bought, you are fighting the interest on what you bought, the interest on past interest, and sometimes new charges layered on top. So when people say, "I am paying every month, why is it not going down?" The answer is often this: because the payment is too close to the floor. The minimum is the floor. It is not a strategy, it is not a payoff plan. It is the least amount required to avoid immediate trouble. And that is a very different thing from the amount required to escape. Think about how clever the language is. Minimum payment sounds gentle. It sounds like the safe option. It sounds like the responsible option when money is tight. And sometimes in a crisis, paying the minimum really is the best available move for that month. If the choice is missing the payment or paying the minimum can protect you from late fees and credit damage. But the danger begins when an emergency move becomes a lifestyle. 1 month of minimum payments can be survival. Years of minimum payments can become a debt treadmill. You keep moving, but you are not getting away. This is why the minimum payment trap is so hard to see. It does not punish you immediately. It rewards you with temporary relief. The app says paid. The due date moves forward. The account stays open. Your brain says, handled, but your future paycheck says, not really, because next month the balance is still waiting, and that waiting balance has a cost. The Federal Reserve's G.19 release for May 2026 showed revolving consumer credit at about $1.34 trillion. That category is mainly credit cards and similar revolving debt. LendingTree's 2026 credit card debt statistics reported that total U.S. credit card balances were about $1.252 trillion at the end of the first quarter of 2026, based on New York Fed data. It also reported that the average APR for cards accruing interest was 22.15% in Q2 2026. Those numbers are not just trivia. They explain why minimum payments feel so weak. When rates are above 20%, time becomes expensive. Every extra month is not neutral. Every extra month can be another month where interest takes part of your payment before your balance gets real relief. That is the third painful truth. The longer the debt survives, the more expensive the original purchase becomes. A $500 emergency can become more than $500. A $1,200 balance can become much more than $1,200. A $5,000 balance can become a multi-year wait if the payments stay near the minimum. And this is the cruel part. The purchase may be gone, broken, eaten, worn out, or forgotten, but the debt can still be alive. You may not even remember everything that created the balance, but interest remembers. The statement remembers. The minimum payment remembers. This is why credit card debt can feel emotionally heavier than other bills. Rent buys this month's housing. A utility bill keeps the lights on. Groceries become food. But old credit card debt can feel like paying for a version of your life that already happened. And when your paycheck keeps paying for the past, it has less power to build the future. That is the real reason the minimum payment trap keeps people broke. It does not only cost interest, it steals future flexibility. Money that could build an emergency fund goes to yesterday's balance. Money that could reduce stress goes to interest. Money that could help you stop using the card goes back into keeping the card alive, and then the next emergency hits. If there is no cash cushion, the card becomes the emergency fund again. Now the balance grows, now the minimum grows, now the next month is tighter, and the cycle continues. That is not a personal failure. It is a cash flow trap. But saying it is not your fault does not mean you have no responsibility. It means you need the right target. The target is not shame. The target is principal. Principal is the actual balance you owe before interest. If you want the debt to die, principal has to shrink, not symbolically, not by a few dollars meaningfully. That leads to the plain money rule for this episode. Never confuse the minimum payment with a debt payoff plan. The minimum keeps the account alive. The extra payment attacks the balance. If you can only pay the minimum this month, do it and protect yourself from late fees. But do not let the minimum lie to you. It is not the finish line. It is a warning light. So what should someone do? First, stop measuring progress by whether you paid on time. Paying on time matters, but it is only step one. Measure progress by the balance. Is the balance lower than last month? Is it lower after new purchases? Is the principal shrinking fast enough to matter? If not, you are not on a payoff plan. You are on a maintenance plan. Second, stop adding new charges to the card you are trying to kill. This is uncomfortable, but it matters. If you are carrying a balance, new purchases can keep the cycle alive. You may pay $300 and then add $250 back. On paper, you made a payment. In real life, the debt barely moved. That is why one of the strongest moves is to separate survival spending from debt payoff. Use a debit card or cash for current spending if you can. Make the credit card balance an old problem you are eliminating, not a living account that keeps collecting new charges. Third, pick a payoff method. The debt avalanche method focuses extra money on the highest interest rate first. Mathematically, this can save the most interest. The debt snowball method focuses extra money on the smallest balance first. Psychologically, this can build momentum because you see accounts disappear. Neither method works if there is no extra payment. The method is the map. The extra principal payment is the engine. Fourth, create a tiny emergency buffer before you expect perfection. This sounds boring, but it is important. If every surprise expense goes back on the credit card, the debt will keep coming back. Even a small cash cushion can interrupt the cycle. It does not need to be perfect. It needs to stop the next small emergency from becoming new revolving debt. Fifth, call the issuer if the rate or payment is crushing you. This is not magic, and it does not always work. But some people can ask for a lower APR hardship plan or different repayment option. If the situation is serious, a nonprofit credit counseling agency may help you understand options. The key is to ask before the debt becomes chaos. And sixth, make the payoff visible. Do not let the app control the story. Write down the balance, the AP, or the minimum payment, the extra payment, and the date you want the balance gone. When you see the full picture, the minimum payment loses some of its power because the trap depends on you looking only at this month. Freedom requires looking at the whole timeline. Here is the question that changes everything. If you only pay the minimum, when will this debt actually be gone? Not when will the account stay current, not when will the payment post, not when will the app stop warning you, when will the balance be zero? If you do not know the answer, the minimum payment is making the plan for you. And the minimum payments plan is usually not your freedom. This is the final painful truth. Credit card companies do not need you to fail. They can profit when you almost succeed. You pay on time. You avoid default. You keep the account active. You carry the balance. You send just enough money to stay in the system. That is why the minimum payment trap is so powerful. It does not look like disaster. It looks like responsibility. But real responsibility is not just keeping the debt polite. Real responsibility is building a plan that makes the debt disappear. So the next time your statement shows a minimum payment, do not panic, but do not be fooled. Ask one question: what amount actually moves me towards zero? That number is the beginning of your payoff plan. The minimum payment is the floor. Your freedom is somewhere above it. This video is for financial education and general analysis only. It is not investment, tax, or legal advice. All financial decisions involve risk, and your situation may be different. And here is the question to leave with. If your credit card company only showed you the date your debt would finally disappear, would the minimum payment still feel responsible?